Well, hi, Stu Bamey coming to you from Pawleys Island, South Carolina. And in this message, I have the unspeakable privilege of announcing that our God loves us far more than we could possibly know or imagine. And I have been praying that God somehow, some way, will allow every person watching this video to know the power and the depth and the love of God for you and for me. We've been talking about the 7 great wonders of the spiritual world. And I want to begin by asking a question. What does this all-knowing, ever-present, all-powerful God that we've been talking about, what does he think about you and about me? How does he view us? Where do we stand before him? Do you recall the scene in The Wizard of Oz when Dorothy and the Lion and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man finally reach the Emerald City, and they get in the gate where Oz lives, and they tiptoe down the hall. And they get in the gate where Oz lives, and they tiptoe down the hallway, and they enter the great throne room of Oz. And they're wondering as they stand there, what does this great Oz think about them? They're standing before him, and they see the smoke, and they hear this booming voice coming from the top of the great dome. I am the Oz, the great and the powerful Oz. Who are you? And they tremble and they wonder, what is Oz like and what does he think about us? I've noticed that many of us feel this way about God, that one time or other, most of us try to size up this all-knowing, ever-present, all-powerful God that, again, we've been talking about, and we wonder, so what does that God think about me? How does God feel about me? To which the Bible is quick to respond. Our God is a loving God. He loves us with an everlasting, unceasing, unfailing love. We read in 1 John chapter 3, verse 1, see what kind of love the Father has given us, that we should be called the children of God. I remember our summer vacations with our family down at Kielwood. We would get on the beach, we'd rent bikes for the week. And I remember my youngest son riding on the beach with his bike. It's a firm, hard-packed sand. And he'd get the wind behind him and stretch out his arms and just ride with the wind. He would feel so free. And me as a father watching this beautiful sunset and my son just floating down the beach, not pedaling, just letting the wind propel him, I would be so full of fatherly love. Now, multiply that love exponentially, and you might get some idea of the Father's love for us. What kind of love for people like you and me with failures in our past and problems in the present and weaknesses and flaws and flat sides? What kind of love does that Father have for you and me? With all that kind of stuff inside of us, that we'd still be called the children of God? That's the kind of love we'll still be called the children of God. What kind of love? This kind of love, that I mattered so much that I would be received into his very family circle, and I would be called a child of God. So the question becomes, how do I know that God loves me? Well, first, God comes right out and says it. I love you. Jeremiah 31:3. I have loved you with an everlasting love. That's the Hebrew word chesed there for steadfast love, never-ending love. I mean, it's no small thing to tell someone you love them, is it? Remember what we went through when we said, I love you to that first serious girlfriend, or maybe in your case, boyfriend? I mean, we're not saying, hey, I love you, mom, or love you, dad, or grandma. We're talking about someone outside our family circle now. And that love becomes a really serious thing. It's a solemn word. It's a big deal. In 1 Samuel 18-20, there are 5 verbs that the Bible uses to describe biblical love between David and Jonathan. The first is achav. This is a deep, abiding affection. It's not all about me getting something. It's about me giving something. It's sacrificial. Then there's berith. This is a covenantal love. I am making a promise. Then there is chesed, which we just mentioned, a steadfast loyalty and trust that whatever happens or whatever we have to go through, I will always extend my love to you. And then there's Cain, grace, where when we're faithless, God is faithful. It's an undeserved love. And finally, there's shalom, a peace, an inner sense that everything is right in our world. We have an inner sense of tranquility and well-being. Well, God describes these kinds of words to describe his love for you and me, and he doesn't toss those words around lightly. He says, I love you with an unceasing, strong, covenantal kind of love that will give you peace on the inside. It's steadfast. It's never ending. Okay, you say, well, talk is cheap. I mean, I'm not just going to listen to what you say. I watch at what a person does in their life. Okay, so what does God do? Does he show us his love? Well, God says, yeah, I do. Let me show you my love. I'm going to send my son, Jesus. Look at Jesus. And I can tell you that one thing that people never said about Jesus is that he wasn't loving and that he didn't love people. Whatever they say about Jesus, there is one common agreement. Jesus loved the blind person and the hurting and the lame and the hopeless and people like you and me. How much, you ask? This much. And he spreads out his arms on the cross. I would give my life for you. Talk is cheap. I will show you what sacrificial love is. I will sacrifice my life, my blood, on a blood-stained cross, so that that cross still stands to this very day as an ultimate sign and reminder to you of the depth of God's love for people like you and for me. God loves us unceasingly. Okay, let's ask this question. What practical difference does God's love make in my life? What difference does it make if I were to live in the awareness of an everlasting, unceasing love that God has for me? Well, let me suggest three things. First, I feel valued. If I matter to God, catch this now, if I matter to God, I matter. I am important. I start to have a new sense of security and identity about who I am and where I came from and why I'm here, about who I am myself. Several years ago, I spent the morning with a group of 10th graders in our community. We were asked in by the community because there had been a suicide in the high school, and they asked some pastors to spend time, as much time as needed, in the classroom with the kids. And in the course of that, I had one young girl writing words about how they felt about themselves on the chalkboard in the front. And over and over again, kids said, I feel compared. Comparison was a number one word that they used over and over again. How do you feel about yourself? I feel like I'm constantly being measured and evaluated in school, in sports, in the academic world. And if that were not enough, then I get on social media and I look at all these beautiful pictures and I say, that's not my life that I'm looking at, my family. That's not my vacation or my clothes. And the kids were saying, we live in a world of constant comparison. I can never do enough or measure up. I just can't do it. Imagine living in that kind of world with looking at those kinds of images of all the beautiful people surrounding us. It's tough. It's really tough. Especially when we're created to seek approval and value and identity. When I was a little kid, I was always asking my mother to come out into the driveway and watch me ride my trike because I wanted her to say, you're doing a really good job. I mean, I'm a little kid riding his trike, but to me, it was my mother, and I was finding approval and value and identity in my little driveway. Life can be self-depleting. It's difficult. It's hard. But when we live in an awareness of the love of God, we don't have to prove our self-identity. We have a new sense of worth, a new sense of value. We matter. If we matter to God, we matter. I mean, if I matter to God, I matter this very moment. I have approval. I have value. I have identity in my life. There's a second thing about God's love. I feel understood. God created me. He created me to know me and love me and understand me. I mean, sometimes my wife understands me better than I understand myself, or I have friends that I've had for a lifetime and they don't understand me. We can get together and we just pick right up where we left off. And I feel so understood and so loved by them. But ultimately, their love, no matter how great, is limited. It's finite. It can let me down. Sooner or later, it probably will. I can't depend upon it. I shouldn't depend upon it. You see, I tend to see life from the limited, finite perspective, but not God. God sees me from an unlimited, infinite vantage point. That's why God sees me, and when he sees me, he knows me and he understands me. We have this desire to be understood for who we are on the inside. We want to be listened to. We want to be known. We want to be understood and loved. And God knows me because he was my creator better than I know myself, my wife knows me, or my friends. God understands me from an eternal, unlimited vantage point. Right now, this very moment, I am understood by God. He doesn't let a tear drop to the ground, as we've been saying, without him knowing it. Sometimes we think that God's love is like human love, but over time it will disappoint us and run out and just stop loving. Or sometimes I think that I've failed God, and over and over and over again I've failed him, and God's going to say, well, that's the last straw. He could never love me any more than that. Never. He could never love me, really. But God says over and over and over again, there's no failure too great, no problem too big, nothing that you have done that's so awful that I would stop loving you. My love for you is an everlasting love, and I understand you. I understand who you are at the core of your being. I understand you more than you could possibly know. And God says, I want you to know that kind of love this very moment in your life. I understand you. Well, there's a third way that God's love makes a practical difference in my life. I feel valued, I feel understood, and finally, I feel assured. Lamentations 3:22. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness to me, O God. I love that verse. I love that verse. The chesed, the steadfast love of the Lord, it never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness. Because of my kids' sports schedule when they were growing up and they were hockey players, and hockey players have to get up real early in the morning. A lot of weekends, I'd get up about 4:30 in the morning, and I'd be heading to the rink so that they could play a game. Sometimes it would be on Sunday morning, and we'd play a game, and I'd get back in time for church. And on the way, we would see the sunrise. And I would reach over and I would hold their little hand, little guy that was sitting next to me, one of my boys. He's got his hockey outfit, ready to play. And I'd say, there's something about the sunrise, isn't there, about daybreak? And I want you to know that God tells us that every time we see the sunrise, he wants that to remind us that he loves us every single day, that his steadfast love never comes to an end. It is new every morning. Every time you see that sunrise, every time you see the sun come up, remember that God's love for you never changes. It's brand new. It's to be experienced new every single day. It's as if God is saying, look at the sunrise every day. You can count on it. It is a permanent reminder of my love for you. It's not going to go away. I'm not going to run out of love for you. It's renewable every day, every single day, all day. You don't have to go looking for love today. You can start every day being assured of my love for you. And when we live in the assurance of God's love, we feel valued, watched over, protected, safe. We feel understood, known, and accepted. We feel assured. We are certain that we can face every day knowing that God has an unceasing love for you and me. And when we approach every single day, we are new every day. When we approach that, we get filled up brand new every single day with a fresh start. We have a whole new outlook on life. Our vantage point of life changes. We're born again every single day into the newness of God's love for you and me. Now, of course, the only question is, how have we responded to this unceasing love of God, this steadfast love of God in our lives. God says, I have been pouring out my love to you every single day since the day you were born. And so how we responded to that, because when we discover God's love for us, it opens up a whole new life for us. When we receive and embrace God's love, the whole temperature of our life changes. We want to live in God's love, and we want to trust it, and we want to have more and more and more of it. Isn't it a beautiful thing to be reminded that God loves me? Every single one of us needs to be reminded every single day, God loves us. So when we enter the presence of God, our all-knowing, ever-present, all-powerful God is saying, I love you, I love you, I love you with an everlasting, unceasing love. I say it and I show it. I want you to know you're valued and you're understood, and I want to assure you of that love, that it is fresh and new every morning. Ephesians 3:17. And I pray that you, firmly fixed in love yourselves, may be able to grasp how wide and deep and long and high is the love of Christ, and to know for yourselves that love so far beyond our comprehension. May you be filled through all your being with God Himself. What a promise! What a promise! Behold, what manner of love is this, that we should be called the children of God. This is God's promise for you and me today, this day, this very moment. And my prayer is that wherever you find yourself, you will know this kind of love in your life this very moment. God's love for us is one of the great wonders of the spiritual world. And hey, let me just stop for a moment and remind you that we'd love to hear from you. And if you want to support us, you can do that by sending a check to Consequential Christianity, Post Office Box 605, Pawleys Island, South Carolina, or you can donate online at consequentialchristianity.com, hit contribute. And what's really important is I would really appreciate it if you would share this with some friends, shoot us their email address. You can do that online at consequentialchristianity.com. Just hit sign up, type in their email list. They can unsubscribe at any moment. We want to share this message of God's love for more and more people. So thank you, and God bless you.